Neil Young and the oil sands, that is the topic of tonight's byline. So Neil Young wants to shut down the oil sands, and he's holding himself and his electric car up as an example of what people should and could do. Fair enough. Mr. Young, like everyone else, is entitled to his opinion. But is his opinion based in fact, or his proposals realistic ones? The answer to those questions, no and no. Unfortunately, this is far too common when it comes to dealing with the political left in Canada. And although he's pretty much an American now, Young is embraced by the political left in Canada for his stand. So the problems with his views. First off, his electric biodiesel car. Reports peg the cost of the car at $1 million to have it retrofitted the way it is. Is that a car that you can afford? I know that I can't. What about hybrid cars and other green automobiles like the Prius, a Leaf, or a Volt? Well, Canadians have voted with their feet and their wallets on those vehicles. They aren't buying them. Not in any significant numbers. Even with heavy subsidies from the federal and provincial governments, Canadians simply don't want the extra expense of paying to drive green. And I'm guessing it's because, well, most of us can't afford those cars. A base model Prius starts at $35,705 for a small sedan. The Nissan Leaf, it's a little cheaper, $31,698 for the base model. And what about the Honda Civic? That's got to be cheaper. Well, it is. The starting price for a standard Honda Civic, one of the best-selling cars in Canada, $15,690. You want to go to the hybrid model? $24,990. I think you can see the difference here. Now, if you're Neil Young, a Northern Ontario boy who spent roughly the last 50 years in the States living in California and amassing a fortune estimated to be more than $60 million, you can afford any of these cars. You can afford the car you want. But the average Canadian who works full-time and earns less than $50,000 a year, well, that would be quite the commitment to buy a green car, even the so-called cheap ones. Neil Young doesn't need tar sands oil, as he calls it. He doesn't need it for his car because he can afford whatever green fuel he wants. Now, of course, he goes on tour, or, whether he's selling his music or on tour to denounce the oil sands, he uses the regular kind of transport, the big, honking, gas-guzzling tour buses. That's what he did last year when he took a tour bus to view the oil sands and then hired a helicopter, not powered by solar or biodiesel, to take an aerial tour.
I first visited the Fort Mac area a while ago and viewed the tar sands that are available for viewing from the ground. And what I saw was a devastating environmental catastrophe.
An environmental catastrophe. Is that the whole story? Well, Tim Moen was hired by Young and his crew to film what was going on up in oil country. But Moen wrote about this on his blog, and he told us here on Byline that Young wasn't interested in the full story. What we didn't shoot was as informative about the narrative as what we did shoot. We did not film any reclaimed land. We didn't film any new extraction operations using greener technology. We didn't film any industry experts. We didn't film Neil's diesel-burning bus that he and his crew rode in. We didn't film the environmentally conscious community active in Fort McMurray. That stuff wasn't on the agenda. Now, Moen is a man that we've talked to. He's a man who sees the good and the bad in the oil sands development. He sees areas that need fixing. He sees opportunity. He sees the good as well as the bad. Well, Young only sees the bad, a twisted version of the bad. What would happen if all the things that Neil Young asked for actually happened? What if we listened to his call to shut the oil sands down? Well, for a start, hundreds of thousands of people would lose their jobs. I'm not just talking the oil patch workers, but also the truckers that transport it, the rail workers, the pipeline workers. I'm talking about the restaurant and grocery workers that feed the people working up in the oil patch in Athabasca. I'm talking about the teachers, the social workers, the municipal workers. If there aren't oil jobs, then people will move and we won't need the schools and other services in Fort Mac or Cold Lake. Once upon a time, people on the left fought for jobs for regular people. Now they seem to fight against them, and I don't understand it. Opponents of the oil sands will claim green energy jobs will replace the oil jobs, but the technology isn't there. And, well, we've seen in Ontario that to replace it, you need massive government subsidies for clean energy, and it hasn't worked except to drive away jobs and drive up prices for consumers. As for our energy, where would it come from if not from Canada? Well, rather than reversing pipelines to bring Canadian oil east, we'd have to keep using them to bring Saudi oil from the east coast into central Canada, Nigerian oil or Venezuelan oil. That's the alternative. That's where our oil imports come from now. Less oil from Alberta means more oil from these places. Fewer jobs from for Canadians, less tax money for government, which means less money for the social programs that the left loves so much. Neil Young's a hero in the left, not just for his music, but also for his political stands. His opposition to the oil sands will only boost the opposition that's already there. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that Neil Young or the political left in this country have thought about the consequences of having their wish come true. That's a pity. And that's the byline.
Canada is trading integrity for money. That's what's happening under the current leadership in Canada, which is a very poor imitation of the George Bush administration in the United States, and is lagging behind on the world stage. It's an embarrassment to many Canadians.
Rick Salutin is a longtime columnist and commentator in Canada. He's written for the Globe and Mail, now writes for the Toronto Star. Joins me now in studio. Rick, your thoughts on Neil Young's comments on the oil sands? Is going out on a limb?
I was going to say, Neil Young didn't really need me or anyone to stick up for him, but after listening to you, I'm sort of glad I'm here to to say something. You know, he did not, as far as I can see, he did not call for shutting down the oil sands, tar sands. He has aligned himself with people up there, with the First Nations people who are concerned about a mine that's being opened up. So I think that's quite responsible. It's not just him doing this. And he didn't make a big thing about his car. I mean, partly he likes cars, and he is interested in developing the technology. But it was because he got sniped at by a hired gun from the Prime Minister's office, who talked about how rock stars need this sort of thing, that he turned it back.
Let's bring up that quote now, because they did go back and forth, and we have both quotes. Jason McDonald in the Prime Minister's office, he's the chief spokesman, he says, even the lifestyle of a rock star relies to some degree on the resources developed by thousands of hardworking Canadians every day. Neil Young, well, as you say, sniping back and forth. He said, of course rock stars don't need oil. I drove my electric car from California to the tar sands and on to Washington, D.C. without using any oil at all, and I'm a rock star.
And he's willing to stand up and speak for himself. He doesn't send up, I mean, where's Stephen Harper? Neil Young said he's perfectly happy to meet Stephen Harper on this. If they think he's worthy of this kind of heavy-duty barrage in response, then why send out a hired flack the way they do? Why doesn't Stephen Harper take him on?
Because that's how the media works. You've been in the media a long time. Reporters call the Prime Minister's office. The Prime Minister puts out a statement.
I think Neil Young comes off in this exchange way better than somebody who's being paid to do what he's told. Lack of conviction versus lack of conviction.
You have come out opposed to the oil sands development in the past to a degree. You've criticized it.
Well, I think it's a really problematic, like most people. I don't consider it a particularly left-right issue.
Well, it's job creation. It's being done in a more environmentally responsible way all the time, and yet it is a left-right issue.
Well, job creation. I mean, people need jobs. Actually, I think Neil Young is quite sensitive on this too. He talked about how he respects people who work, always has, and he knows they have to work. But it's wretched to put them in a situation where the jobs that are the only decent jobs that are available to them are jobs that are going to wreck the planet for their kids. Because why do working people work? They work for their families, basically. And then their kids are going to be saying to them, why are you going to leave us with this kind of a planet? It's true, it's just a horrible choice that you end up with, unless you have a business community and a government that's willing to create other possibilities.
Well, what would the other possibilities be? Because if we don't get oil from Canada, as I said, our main imports now come from Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, Venezuela.
Well,
do you think that those are more environmentally sustainable?
Well, wait. I mean, a lot of this debate is over whether those tar sands products should be used for Canada or should be shipped. I mean, if we ship them to the U.S., it's not about us using it. The Keystone Pipeline is about shipping it down to the Gulf Coast. The Americans refine it and sell it to South America. And a lot of the alternatives, you know, I don't consider myself I don't think I need to apologize for the NDP or something, but their position, and I think the Trudeau position probably also, is that we should refine the stuff here, get the jobs here. There are different positions on what you could call
but there's
the left.
opposition to pipelines that take it to the West Coast that would export it to China. There's opposition to pipelines to the States, and there's opposition to any pipeline that brings it east, whether it's reversing Line 9, which is an existing pipeline, or any of the new pipelines.
Well, you're not against the debate on this.
No, but I'm against the idea that all of them should be shut down, which seems to be the position of the environmental movement.
Well, I don't know. I don't think you can throw out this, broad brush about the environmental movement or the left. These things have to be debated. But when I said that about job creation, I think, the person who should really be on the defensive here is Stephen Harper and his government, because the only economic strategy they have is just pull out whatever is in the ground and sell it as fast as you can without doing any refining to it. That's not an economic strategy. Yeah. So, and then you turn around and you say, emergency, there's not going to be any jobs if we shut this down. But we don't have an economic strategy. The other possibilities haven't even been considered.
All right. We'll continue the debate another time. Rick Salutin, thanks so much.